Hey, it's James here from GoodGuitarist.com, and today I want to show you how to understand music theory on 3 different levels. First, I have a 2-minute explanation where I'm basically going to share the most useful theory shortcuts, and that's going to be followed by a more thorough explanation that'll take a little bit longer, and then there's another level after that, and we'll talk about that at the end of this lesson. So first, music theory in 120 seconds. All in all, there are 12 notes. When we get to the 12th note, we start again at number 1, but it's 1 octave higher. What's an octave? More on that later. Now, out of those 12 notes, 7 of them are natural notes, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. 5 of them are sharp and flat notes, and we're just going to use a dot to indicate where they are for now. And it's very important to remember this. There's no sharp or flat note between B and C and between E and F. And those are all the notes. But we only need some of them to create a key. For example, we'll create the key of C. We start on C and we apply this formula. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Whole step means to skip a note. Half step means to go to the note right beside it. We end up with C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And those are the notes in the C major scale. C is special because it has no sharps or flats. It's like the default scale for learning theory. Now, once you have your scale, we can create chords. You start on the first note of the scale, you skip a note, and then you skip a note. That gives you C, E, G. And those 3 notes make up a C major chord. We do that for every letter within the C major scale. So D, F, A, E, G, B, and so on. We end up with C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished. Those are the chords in the key of C, and we can number them. The 1, 4, 5 are major, 2, 3, 6 are minor, and 7 is diminished. And you can apply this to any scale. Here's the G major scale. We number them. 1, 4, 5 are major, 2, 4, 6 are minor, 7 is diminished. Bam, all the chords in the key of G major instantly at your disposal. And having the numbers under each chord lets you change keys. So if your chord progression in the key of G is G, E minor, C, D, that's 1, 6, 4, 5. You apply 1, 6, 4, 5 to the key of C, you end up with C, A minor, F, G. That's the same chord progression, but in the key of C. And that's the foundational theory that you can use for everything from learning songs, jamming with others, writing your own songs, reading chord charts, and so much more. Now I'm going to start again and go through this all, but spend some extra time explaining the finer details and help you build a deeper understanding of the most critical concepts of music theory. In Western music, there are just 12 notes, and they repeat forever in either direction. When we get to the 12th note, we start again at number 1, and it's the same note, but it's 1 octave higher. Now, what's an octave? Every note makes a frequency or a certain amount of vibrations per second, measured in hertz. This first note, let's say it's 220 hertz. If we double that times 2, we end up with 440 hertz. That's an octave. And for some reason, it sounds the same to our ears. So I can play a melody in a lower octave and then play the same melody in a higher octave. And it's the same 3 notes, same numbers, they're just an octave apart. Bass line will generally be played in a lower register, and a melody will be played in a higher register generally. Either way, we have 12 notes, and instead of using numbers, we generally use letters. 7 of the notes are natural. That means they're not sharp or flat. And we just use the first 7 letters of the alphabet for them. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. The other 5 notes are sharps and flats. The note above A is called A sharp, and the note below B is called B flat. And those are the exact same note. It's called an enharmonic equivalent. And whether you call that note A sharp or B flat depends on the context. Just remember, you go up to make a sharp and down to make a flat. There's no sharp or flat note between B, C, or between E, F. That's one of the most critical pieces of information to remember here. So you go above B, you don't get B sharp, you get C. And if you go below C, you don't get C flat, you get B. Likewise for E and F, though There are exceptions to this, but music theory gets pretty crazy at that point. Let's just ignore it for now. Either way, we end up with all the notes, and it goes on forever and ever in either direction. The note that we call A is 220 hertz. The next A is 440 hertz, and the A after that is 880 hertz. We're just doubling the frequency every octave. Now, when it comes to actually making music, you don't really need to know about the frequencies, but if you want to get into recording music, it's actually really useful. You can mix a lot faster and, do a lot more if you do understand something about that. Either way, those are all the notes. But to make musical music, we need to pick some of the notes and exclude others and create a key. A key is essentially notes that sound good together, and it all begins with a scale. Scales consist of whole steps and half steps. You might also hear people refer to them as whole tones and half tones. It's the same thing. A whole step or a whole tone means you skip a note, and a half step means to go to the next note. So if we're on the note A and we go up a half step, we end up on A sharp or B flat. If we start on A and go up a whole step, we end up on B. And there's a formula for the major scale. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. To create our key, first we pick a note. Let's go with G. From G, we go up a whole step to A, another whole step to B, half step to C, a whole step to D, a whole step to E, and a whole step to this sharp or flat note above F. And finally, a half step gets us back to G, where the pattern can repeat over and over, climbing up through the octaves. And we end up with G, A, B, C, D, E. And what should we call this last one? It can either be F sharp or G flat. Let's write it out both ways. This first way makes more sense to me because we use each letter once. In this second way, we have a G and a G flat. We're using G twice, and we're not using F at all. So a rule of thumb for deciding on whether to call the note by its sharp name or its flat name is to use every letter once. You just figure out all the ones that aren't sharp or flat, and usually it's pretty evident, but I also have a trick to it. I'll just do another one just to kind of clarify. We'll start on the note D. We're creating the key of D, which is based on the D major scale. Before I start with the pattern, though, I'm going to write out the natural notes. I'm just going to write D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. I don't care about sharps or flats. I'm just writing out each note once. Now we're going to start on D, and we're going to do our whole steps and half steps. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And since we already wrote out each note once, it's easy to decide which sharps or flats to use. D, E, and here we're going to use F sharp instead of G flat because we already have an F written there. G, A, B, and here I'll use C sharp to use up that C, and we're back to D. Let's make a flat one just for practice. We'll do the key of B flat. So we're starting on a flat note. First step, write out the natural notes starting on B. B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. We just have our notes laid out, no sharps or flats required. We're going to flatten the B right away because we're making the key of B flat, of course. And then we're just going to do our pattern starting on B flat, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And we're just going to pick out all the natural notes, C, D, F, G, A. Those are obvious. And this E, it's going to be flat because we don't have an E yet. And that's all there is to it. Now, before we go any further, I want to answer a common question. What's the point of a key? Why does it matter? What do I need to use scales for? And the answer is simple. The key provides us with two things, a scale and the chords that go with it. We can use the notes of the scale to sing melodies or to take solos or create harmonies or little, guitar fills. And the chords, which are derived from the key and the scale, provide a wonderful backdrop for all that stuff. So let's generate some chords. We're going to do this in the key of C. The key of C is made up of the C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And to this scale, we're going to apply yet another pattern. This one's very simple. You start on the first note of the scale, C. You skip a note, and then you skip a note. So we start on C, skip a note to E, skip a note to G. We get C, E, G, and those three notes together create the C major chord. We do that same pattern again, but this time starting on D. D, F, A. Those three notes together make a D minor chord. So you do this starting on each note within the C major scale. And we end up with EGB, FAC, GBD, ACE, BDF. And we end up with each of the chords in the key of C. And honestly, if we had to do it that way every time, it would take ages to accomplish anything with theory. So there's a great shortcut here. We write our scale out. We put the numbers underneath. The key that we're in, that's number 1, and then the rest follow suit. And then we can label them major or minor using this shortcut. 1, 4, 5 are major, 2, 3, 6 are minor, and 7 is diminished. And people often point out when we play guitar chords, we're playing like 5 or 6 notes. Looking at this C chord here, there's 5 notes in it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, those are all C's, E's, and G's. C, E, G, C, E. The 3 notes that make up a C major chord. Or this G, for instance. G, B, D, G, D, G. Just G's, B's, and D's, just like the 3 notes that make up the G major chord. So let's review all this using all the shortcuts so I can show you the quick way to do it all. Let's say I want to figure out the chords in the key of E. I start on the letter E and I just write out the letters, no sharps or flats, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, until we get up to E again. Then I look at my line of notes and I apply the major scale pattern starting on E. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. I just write it underneath. And then I just take the notes. I got to sharpen the F, the G, sharpen the C, and the D. That's the E major scale. And that's how quickly you can do it once you get used to this. You can do that in your head. Now, to complete my key, I number each of these, and then I make the 1, 4, 5 major, the 2, 3, 6 minor, the 7 is diminished, and there you go. In about 20 seconds, even less if you're not explaining this, you have all the chords that you need. And most people will eventually just memorize all the chords in a given key, and that's how they can just kind of figure out songs on the fly. Now, adding the numbers underneath each chord not only allows us to make the chords, but it allows us to change the keys easily. For instance, I have this cool chord progression that goes C, G, A minor, F. And I can write out the key and figure out the numbers. That's 1, 5, 6, 4. Then I can write out another key, like the key of D. And I can just pick out the 1, 5, 6, and 4 chords, D, A, B minor, G. And it's the same progression, it sounds the same, it's just in a higher key. And with this foundation for tonal harmony, you'll be able to pretty easily pick up more and more things. It's like trying to learn how to read. Now you're basically literate, and it'll make sense if you look something up. You look up the melodic minor scale or secondary dominance. There's obviously a ton more to it, but you have that foundation now. When people discuss or teach music theory, usually it's about the notes, whole steps, half steps, keys, scales, modes, all that stuff. But there's another part of theory that is often neglected that I feel deserves some time in the spotlight, and that is rhythm theory. And rhythm is very simple to understand. The basic unit is the beat. The beat is just a recurring pulse that happens regularly, like your heartbeat, and it can go fast, it can go slow, it can go everywhere in between. And most of the time, we take that recurring beat and we put it into groups of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And every group of 4 beats is called a measure. If we play a note and the duration of that note equals 4 beats, like this, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We call that a whole note because it takes up a whole measure. If we play a note and the duration takes up a single beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, we call those quarter notes. A half note takes up half a measure, or 2 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. A half note with a dot after it takes up 3 beats. 1, 2, 3, rest. So quick recap, a single beat is a quarter note, 2 beats is a half note, 3 beats are a dotted half note, and 4 beats is a whole note. Now let's go the other way around and chop up our beat. This is called subdividing. We'll start by playing a note on every beat. quarter notes. I'm gonna have a metronome keep the beat for me. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're just playing quarter notes here, and then we're gonna add a note halfway between each beat. We're subdividing each beat into 2 shorter beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're just chopping each quarter note in half, and these are called eighth notes. And when we write that down, we have our beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we just put and between each of those numbers. We get 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So the subdivision that we added halfway between beat 1 and 2 is the and after 1, and we just use a plus sign, and that's it. Those are ands and subdivision. And generally on guitar, we play downstrokes on the numbered beats and upstrokes on the ands. And that's how you generate strumming patterns or picking patterns. Now, we can also chop each beat into 3 equal pieces and get triplets. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and we can chop each beat into 4 equal pieces and get 16th notes. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and in order to take all this stuff and internalize it, I think the best way is to take strumming patterns, like really familiar ones. For instance, this one. You'd use that on like countless songs. I'll put a list here. And we can just write the counting underneath that pattern, just like I would show you in a lesson. And instead of thinking about it in downstrokes and down ups and all that, let's think about it in terms of quarters and eighths and all that. So here we have a downstroke on beat 1, a downstroke on beat 2, a downstroke on beat 3. Well, those are just quarter notes, quarter, quarter, quarter. And then that down up on 4 and, those are 2 eighth notes. So that strumming pattern is quarter, 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 eighth, eighth. And that's one measure of music. Let's take one more. This is the most common strumming pattern ever. On beat 1, we have a downstroke. That's a quarter note. On beat 2 and, those are 2 eighth notes. And then on beat 3, we're missing. And then we have and 4 and, up, down, up. So on beat 3, we're going to put an eighth note rest. And then eighth, eighth, eighth. Let's do one more. So this one, we have a downstroke on beat 1. Nothing's happening on beat 2. A downstroke on 3, and then a down up on 4 and. So we look at 1 and 2. That's 2 whole beats that start with a single downstroke. That's a half note. Then on beat 3, a quarter note, and then on 4 and 2 eighth notes. So half note, quarter note, eighth, eighth, and that's that strumming pattern. Now, when it comes time to triplets, sixteenths, and all that, I think it's really important to get super good at mixing up half notes, quarter notes, and eighth notes first. And then once you're established with that, it's not too tricky to start branching out. So we'll save that for another lesson. I want this thing to be like one little package that you can get to work on right away. I don't want to overwhelm you. One thing that you might see is people using ties, and that just lets you join the value of 2 notes. So if I have 2 quarter notes and I put a tie to tie them together, they end up being a half note. And it's exactly the same as if I wrote a half note. So that is enough to get you started on this. If you are interested in learning more about rhythm theory or just music theory in general, I have a course, Music Theory 101, that's designed from a guitar player's perspective. I went to university for music. I took all the tonal harmony courses. I'm quite good at this stuff, I got like straight A's on all this stuff because it makes a lot of sense to me. But something that I noticed was understanding it on paper is one thing, but applying it to real life situations. Like you show up at a jam session, what music theory are you going to actually use? That's the kind of stuff that I want to expose you to. All the shortcuts and stuff that you can just do in your head so that you're playing the right notes, so that you're able to figure out the chords to the song, so that you can change the key, so that you can write music and understand where you're going with it, and it all starts making sense, So it's theory from a guitar player's perspective for guitar players. I'll put a link to that in the corner and down below. If you enjoy learning guitar with me, I'd appreciate if you could take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like the video, let me know what you think in the comments down below, or just say hi. Have a fun time practicing, and I'll see you soon.